Yes, Senator Kathuri, you have any supplementary question?
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much indeed. Honorable Speaker, this is a matter of national interest. And if you can indulge us, maybe you can give us a bit of time to ventilate on this matter, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this matter was canvassed during the last Senate. And I'm happy that the member who raised that matter is in this House. There is for the Senate. Honorable Minority Leader. Honorable Minority Leader. No, I wanted to catch the ear of the Speaker because for sure this is a matter of national interest, Honorable Speaker. And we want to, maybe if you can give us some indulgence, especially when asking the supplementary questions, because our former colleagues, councillors, have really given an input to this republic. They actually laid the foundation where today we lay our legs on. So, Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, maybe the senators who might be interested, you can give us some leeway to really ask the right questions, because those councillors have no other forum except this House, especially the Senate, so that we can canvass this matter. And Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Dr. Mwangi for availing his time also to appear here on behalf of almost 1,500 councillors as their chairman. So, Mr. Speaker, you can see the interest that this matter has. And therefore, first of all, I want to inform the CS that the payment of these councillors was an undertaking by Honorable Ambassador Ukula, who was the CS, National Treasury and Planning. And this matter came through this House, Mr. Speaker. What we are trying to unlock today is the resolution of the Senate on the 18th of October 2018. When this matter was canvassed here, the matter was raised by the one and only the Senator for Kitui, who is, by God's grace, he is present in this House.
Senator Kathuri, just proceed to ask your supplementary question. Because
the
dashboard
Mr.
is
Speaker,
full here, and the more you...
It is the first time we are hearing that there was another legal opinion which was sought with the AG, and the AG gave an opinion that there was no legal basis for payment of these honorarium or the pensions to these councillors, Mr. Speaker. That was last year, 2023. So from the time this matter was canvassed up to the 2023 legal issue that the AG raised, we don't know what happened and who is this trying to frustrate the councillors. Mr. Speaker, it is actually, if there is no legal basis, it is the AG who should work tirelessly to ensure that we have a legal framework to give them their pension or whatever they worked for. So, Mr. Speaker, the CS, I don't want my former colleague to go into this route. That is the one who has not been able to pay the councillors. He has been unable
Senator
to pay. Okay.
Senator Fomeru, Senator Kathuri. What is your question to the Honorable CS?
My question is, Mr. Speaker, is that I have fully stated my stand that it is the first time again this matter is arising. Even the chairman is not aware about the legal opinion by the AG. I don't know who sneaks these opinions so that these people don't get a very little money, less than even 200 million, Mr. Speaker, sir. This country is shaming itself. These are former leaders who really need support. They don't have even money to pay for SHA. Because I met the former councillors from Meru. Very old ones, they have even no 300 shillings to pay for SHA. And then there is a group somewhere which is frustrating them not to pay them 200,000 per councillor, those who served for less than 3 terms. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is to reform back the Treasury. We don't need that legal opinion. It can be quashed again by this House, Mr. Speaker. So these Wazee can get their pension, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, that is why, this matter is not about the questions, but needed to see.
Senator Fomeru, with all that, what are you asking the Honorable
the CS to set aside that legal opinion and pay the councillors without further delay. That
So
is
your question is, could the Honorable CS set aside this
set aside, yes, he set aside that
the legal
opinion.
opinion and proceed to pay? Is that your
And,
question?
and if he cannot be able to set aside, he can still request the AG through Treasury. He has that power.
Good.
To request the AG to set aside that opinion or to come up with a legal framework that will enhance the payment of the pension and honorarium to the former councillors, Mr. Speaker.
So, Honorable CS, there are two supplementary questions from Honorable Gathuri. One, are you in a position to set aside the legal opinion? Secondly, if not, can the AG come up with a legal framework within which the former councillors can be paid their money? Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Am I able to set aside the legal opinion of the Attorney General? The answer is no. I don't have that capacity. The Attorney General is actually the legal advisor to the government, and once she has given the opinion, or he has given the opinion, then that opinion, I cannot set it aside. The other issue before us is whether we need to have a legal framework to pay the councillors or former councillors. The answer is yes. I believe legal opinions are based on legal provisions. And so the Attorney General must have been informed by a clear foundation of the law. So the people with the mandate to bring a legislative framework through which councillors can be paid is actually this House. What my advice would be is for Senator Gathuri to make a provision in law that would allow these former councillors to be paid. It's not that I am not interested in supporting these councillors. Many of them come from my place. I know them personally, and I've even met them during my times in politics, and they have complained, and I know what they go through. But for us to be able to pay these former councillors gratuity or pension, there is need for legal framework. Remember, Mr. Speaker, we even have cases of former members of parliament whom I personally made an attempt to provide a legal framework through which they could be paid. And I brought a bill in parliament, which bill was passed, and the president refused to assent to it. But this was in realization that there was no legal framework to pay former MPs. There cannot be lack of legal framework to pay former MPs, which made us to attempt to amend the law, and yet there is a legal framework to pay former councillors. To be honest, if these former councillors have to be paid, there must be change of the law. We all know that even our constitution talks about any money that is paid to anybody who is appearing like a public officer, like I believe councillors would appear, needs to go, that needs to be processed through SRC. But lastly, I want to say that, you know, these councillors were not even drawing a salary. So you don't even know if you are to pay them. You are basing it on what? And the motion by the Senate was a motion. Motion remains an intent. It doesn't have the legal basis to occasion withdrawal of public funds. So the motion remains motion. If it was a bill passed by the House, then that becomes legally binding. But where we are, there is an intention to pay councillors, former councillors, but we lack the legal framework. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Enoch. What guidance are you seeking, Senator, for Kakamega?
Mr. Speaker, I have listened very painfully the difficulty the minister appears to be having. But listening to it and reading it together, and listening to it and reading Article 94 of the Constitution, which speaks to the role of Parliament, it says, Mr. Speaker, in 94(5), that no person or body other than Parliament has the power to make a provision having the force of law in Kenya except under the authority conferred by this constitution. Mr. Speaker, we have not come to Nairobi in this house to speak in vain. We do so under the provision of this constitution, which I have read, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is the minister suggesting that the Attorney General has the power to veto Parliament? This Parliament made a resolution.
Senator Boni, I'll give you an opportunity to ask a question.
No, I was asking for interpretation.
Senator Enoch,
Mr. Speaker, I wanted
I
you
can
to
see
guide
your
us.
name on the dashboard. I'll give you an opportunity.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, clearly for my brother, my friend, my colleague, Waziri Mbadi, the shoe is clearly on the other foot. That's very clear. The shoe is on the other foot. Mr. Speaker, just riding on what Senator Alwale is trying to ask, can Parliament, Mr. Speaker, can this Senate, your Senate that you preside over, Mr. Speaker, can it legislate in vain? Is it possible that senators will sit here, pass resolutions, and they just talk show, the AG seated in an office somewhere decides, no, this is not good enough? Mr. Speaker, the question is, so when the minister received that advisory opinion from the AG, when did he write to you, Mr. Speaker, to tell you that we have received, you made a resolution on this date, we have received an advisory opinion from the AG on this day, and so please act accordingly? Mr. Speaker, I will not belabor the point. The CS fought with me on this matter when he was pushing the agenda of former members of the National Assembly to be compensated. And in front of the Speaker, as I go to sit down, I have a message for the CS from one former member of Parliament from Kitui East, Honorable Mweu. He is still seated waiting for the day that this administration will live up to its word, that the things that had been done wrongly will be done right and people will get their rights under this administration. The Speaker, can your house legislate in vain?
So is that the question to me or to the Honorable CS?
The Speaker, it's just a clever way of getting you to be agitated because somebody is trying to say that you can sit on that chair, preside over a motion, a resolution, the Speaker, push ministries to sit down and come up with a solution to a problem, and then one person, just a stroke of the pen, says all that we have done is in vain. The question is to the CS, can this house, can any house of Parliament legislate in vain?
Senator, to inform who, Honorable? Whom do you want to inform?
Actually, it's the House.
Proceed.
Mr. Honorable Speaker, the CS has not given the right answer because, number one, this was not a motion, Honorable CS. A task force was formed, which included the Ministry of National Treasury and Planning, the Ministry of Devolution and Asal, and the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. So, Mr. Speaker, an interagency task force on payment of honorarium and monthly pension to former councillors was formed so that also to go and negotiate with them. And they negotiated and they agreed on what should be paid. The multi-agency, interagency task force gave proposals and the three CSs appended their signatures in this report that I will table to this House. Yeah? So the three CSs who appended signatures to the amount of money that was to be paid to the councillors are one, CS, National Treasury and Planning, Number 2, that was Ambassador Ukula Tan. Number 2, Honorable Eugene Wamarwa, who was the CS then of Minister of Devolution and ASAL, and Honorable Simon Chelugui, who was the CS Minister of Labor and Social Protection. So it is a negotiated package and agreement which was to be provided. And they understand in the year 2022-2023, that is when their monies were to be put into the budget. So, Mr. Speaker, we are not talking of a motion, but a resolution which was communicated now to the clerk of the Senate, from National Treasury and Planning to the clerk of the Senate, and advising the Senate what the interagency task force agreed. And this is a property of the Senate, Mr. Speaker. So we are not talking of a motion passed by the House. It is a resolution from an interministerial task force. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to table this resolution to the Senate so that as we discuss, this matter is not going to be discussed and then we say today we are finished with the CS, but we must review this decision, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me all these indulgences, Honorable Speaker.
Table. Senator from Mombasa. Honorable CS, just note down the questions. You respond them at one go.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Nakumbuka mwaka jana wakati kwa kamati ya fedha ya bunge hili, waziri wa zamani wa fedha na hazina alikuja mbele ya komiti wakati tunajadili budget policy statement, na akakomiti kwamba hizo pesa ambazo watakana kulipwa madiwani wa zamani zitawekwa katika bajeti ya mwaka 2023 24-25. Sasa je, ni sawa mawaziri waje katika bunge hili na kamati zake kutoa maelezo ama kutoa majibu ambayo hayalingani? Kwa sababu Profesa Njuguna Ndungu alikuwa ni waziri wa fedha na hazina kuu ya serikali ya Kenya Kwanza. Leo tuko na waziri Mbadi. Je, ni sawa mawaziri kuja na majibu tofauti katika bunge hili? Leo wanakuja wanasema hivi, kesho wanakuja wanasema vile. Asante.
Senator Boni.
Mr. Speaker, our brother Mbadi is a very experienced parliamentarian, and he knows that Parliament does not speak in vain. I leave that to his conscience. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, the former councillors of Nandi County, Uasin Gishu County, and Kakamega County came to see me formally, and they told me that the president had met them and made a commitment just before he won the election that he would ensure this promise by the Jubilee government would be implemented by the... No, that interministerial was during the Jubilee government, that he was aware of that task force and that decision he would implement if elected. Since God has been very kind, President Ruto is now the president, and he committed himself to these councillors. Can the minister undertake, as the financial advisor to the president, to go and make the necessary consultations so that the promise of the president and the expectations of the former councillors converge? We pay our old people. After all, if we pay this 200 million, it's a form of financial stimulus. They will spend the money in public and the economy will be vibrant in their villages, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Olekina.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, ningependa kufahamu kutoka kwa waziri wa fedha. Je, ni lini jambo ambalo walizungumzia na wakakubaliana kama waziri wa fedha, waziri wa kazi, labor, na pia there were 3 of them, walikuwa 3, na waziri wa ugatuzi, wakakubaliana kweli kwamba wanakwenda kusubmit ama kupeana cabinet memo ili pesa ambayo ilikuwa bilioni 2,600,816 iweze kuwekwa katika bajeti ya mwaka wa 2023 na 24 ili iweze kuwalipa councillors wa zamani ambayo walikuwa 11,909 na pia milioni 218 iweze kulipa councillors ambayo walifanya kazi zaidi ya term 3. Ni lini, ni lini mambo ilibadilika ambaye katika seneti hii? Mheshimiwa, najaribu kuongea Kiswahili kabisa ndio councillors waweze kuelewa. Ni lini hiyo ilibadilika ambaye seneti hii inaweza pronounce itself, sijui inaitwaje kwa Kiswahili, kujieleza kupitia namna mbili. Ya kwanza ni wakuwa na ile mkataba motion, ya pili ni wakipitisha sheria. Seneti hii ilipitisha mkataba ikasema ya kwamba hawa former councillors ambayo walikuwa ni 11,400 waweze kulipwa pesa. Tukazungumza, tukapiga mikutano hapa. Waziri wa fedha ambaye ndiye alikuwa kabla ya rafiki yangu Mbadi kuja, alikuja katika kamati ya leba. Alipotoka hapa, inakumbuka vizuri sana, ilikuwa Aprili tarehe 23. Tarehe 23 akatueleza ya kwamba hao wenyewe wamekubaliana wanakwenda submit cabinet memo ili hii pesa iwekwe kwenye bajeti. Ningependa kujua hii pesa iliwekwa kwa bajeti alafu ikarudi kaondolewa kwa sababu hawa ni watu ambao wamezeeka, hawana faida. Na ukijaribu kuangalia ni kwamba hao ndio wamefanya tuje hapa. Hao ndio walitengeneza. Kama si hao, ugatuzi ingeweza kuja. So Mheshimiwa Speaker, ningependa kujua katika kweli ni lini jambo hili lilibadilika. Ya pili, nikienda kumalizia,
Honorable
Mheshimiwa,
you're entitled to only one supplementary question.
Hiyo ni swali
our order paper. No, under our standing orders.
Mheshimiwa Speaker, hiyo ni swali moja, swali ndio ngumu. Naomba tu nikubalie kwa sababu kama ningekuwa naeleza na Kizungu ingekuwa imeflow vizuri.
Conclude.
Mheshimiwa Mbadi ametueleza ya kwamba alipata ujumbe kutoka kwenye Attorney General ya kwamba hii jambo halifai kufanywa sheria. Mimi nauliza, wakati ile Mheshimiwa Ndongo alikuja kwenye kamati ya kazi ya leba, hakuwa amezungumza na huyo Attorney General kumweleza kwamba mimi sasa nakwenda kule nishawishi, na badala kabla hawajapeleka hii mkataba wao katika cabinet, kwa sababu hao wenyewe walisema wakuwa watatu, 3 cabinet secretaries watapeleka joint memo, cabinet memo, ndio hiyo hela iwekwe kwenye kwa nini kwenye bajeti. Ni lini hii ilibadilika? Ama ni ile mchezo ya paka na panya ambaye inakimbia hivi, leo tunasema tunapatia hawa, lakini kwa sababu hawana ile siasa, political clout, wanatupwa nje. Mheshimiwa Speaker, ningependa kujua kwa sababu maisha ya hawa former councillors ni maisha ambaye lazima tuwapiganie, kwa sababu leo hii Mheshimiwa Mbadi akisema ati tunabadilisha tuweke kama inua jamii, hiyo itakuwa ni discrimination. Kweli unawezaje kusema na inua jamii ya councillor nampa 1,200 na pia naenda kuinua jamii ya baba ya Ledamo unampatia shilingi 2,000? Hiyo kweli inawezekana? Hiyo kweli hiyo ni ungwana? Asante.
Now, honorable senators, allow the honorable CS to respond, because in his response, I believe he may even address some of the issues that are yet to be raised. Honorable CS, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to state categorically that it's not in my interest to deny former councillors what is rightfully theirs. What I'm emphasizing on is, yes, it is desirable to pay these former councillors. Many of them are suffering, having served this country and having been in public offices and respected personalities in their right in this country. But we must do it within the law. Now, I have been asked by Senator Wambua a few questions, I think about two. One, whether the House can act in vain. My answer is no. The House should not act in vain. Did we write to the Speaker?
Senator Eddy and Senator Fogarisha kindly.
Did my office write to the Speaker on this matter or the opinion of the Attorney General? Unfortunately, I don't think we did. We didn't write to inform the Speaker. So the question here that has been asked is, there was a task force that was set up and the resolution of the House. First of all, let me start with the task force. Is the report of the task force binding? My understanding is no, it is not. Why? Because the Constitution, which Senator Boni Aluale mentioned, provision number 94, or Article 94(5), says no person or body, including task forces, other than Parliament, has the power to make provision having the force of the law in Kenya, except under authority conferred by this Constitution or by legislation. I am yet to see the provision in our Constitution or any written law passed by this Parliament which has authorized a task force formed to approve payment to former councillors. If there is that provision, I would obey and pay. Make provision in our budget and pay, but there is none. So that task force remains a task force. Its report should be implemented procedurally, which has not. So up to now, there is no, out of the task force, which should have, a legislation should have flown automatically from the task force report to now anchor it in law, and that has not been done. Now, on a question by Senator Faki, why I have not respected or obeyed what former CS is committed to do. Unfortunately, I want to report to the Senate that yes, my predecessor, Honorable Yatani, or even Honorable Ndungu, probably made a commitment, but they didn't pay. The person who is paying now is myself. I cannot pay unless backed by the law. Because when now it will raise issues, I am the one accountable. I'm the one responsible. I cannot hide behind people who made commitments or intentions and didn't pay. So the paymaster now is myself. If they paid, I would have come here to report that they paid. But they didn't pay, and they left it for me to pay, and I'm checking the legal framework, and I don't see it. A question was asked about the Attorney General's powers. My reading of Article 156 is this, that the Attorney General is the principal legal advisor to the government. Now, being the principal legal advisor, I take his advice or her advice very seriously. And the Attorney General gave advice on 8th of May 2023 on this, and that advice has not been vacated or changed. Senator Boni Aluale has asked me about, again, Parliament legislating in vain. I want to say again, Parliament cannot legislate in vain. The only thing that I said is, and we have been in this House with Senator Boni Aluale for a while, we know the power and the force that a motion has and a bill, an act of Parliament. A motion usually, and by the way, this has been the legislative practice, that if you want a bill to pass easily, you craft it in a motion. That motion is debated, and once you succeed with the motion, then you follow through by generating a bill to actualize your motion. How I wish that Senator Wambua, who raised this matter, brought it to the House through a motion, followed through by bringing a legislation to anchor whatever the House resolved into law to allow for payment. If that is done, I will definitely obey the legal framework. As to the President's commitments to pay the councillors, I want to again read Article 94 of the Constitution, that no person, and there is no exclusion here, no person or body, whether President or anybody else, other than Parliament, has the power to make provision having the force of law in Kenya, except under authority conferred by the Constitution or by legislation. I am yet to see where power has been given to the President to give authority for payment that is not anchored in law. So what I would advise is if the President initiate through the executive a legislative proposal which would now give me the legal basis upon which this payment can be made, I will obey. Senator Lekina, Senator for Narok County, since when did we start? In fact, it was in Kiswahili, but I'm trying to translate it into English, that an agreement by 3 CSs be changed. I am not changing the task force report. What I'm saying is that task force report has made recommendations. Those recommendations now should be anchored in law to allow me